Welcome back. All right, so as promised, I'm going to talk about defensemen who lead the all-time games played list in the National Hockey League. Many of these players I'm familiar with. There are a few that I didn't actually see play. Zdeno Chara is now the all-time games played leader amongst defensemen, 1,652. And he's been pretty darn good to get there. 207 goals, 467 assists, 674 points. His penalty minutes, 2,073. So he's also dragged some penalty minutes into that. Won Stanley Cup, 2011 with the Boston Bruins. And he won the Norris Trophy in 2009. So it's a little bit surprising he only has the one Norris Trophy to his credit. But Hall of Fame, yep. He's definitely on his way to the Hall of Fame. And whether this is his last year or if he, hangs around for another year or whatever he decides to do, nothing but respect for the career he's had. Now, Chris Chelios, he was invited to the game that broke the record, but had previous agreements with TNT to be on their broadcast, so he'll be at their next game. Chris Chelios, 1,651 games played, 183 goals, 763 assists, 948 points. Hall of Fame defenseman. 2,891 penalty minutes. Chelios could fight 2. So it's interesting to me that the defensemen that lead this list aren't defensemen that play soft hockey, aren't defensemen that don't go out there and hit. They're not defensemen who are scared to drop the gloves. They've been pretty tough guys, whether it's Chara, whether it's Chelios, or there's a couple others on this list too. 3 Stanley Cups for Chris Chelios. And he wins the Norris Trophy in 1989, 1993, and most impressively, 1996. The 1996 Norris, for me, was the most impressive of the 3. But, yeah, three Norris Trophies for him. Scott Stevens, 1,635 games played. He had 196 goals, 712 assists for 908 points. Penalty minutes? Tons. 2,785 penalty minutes. The interesting thing with that is that a lot of the hits that Stevens threw then would be considered not as legal of hits now. Now, I will say this. If Scott Stevens was playing the game now, I think he would have modified his game so that those hits he threw that may not be legal, he would throw them in a legal manner. So, just putting out there, he already had almost 3,000 penalty minutes, and he was throwing hits that people were mad about at the time. So, he has 3 Stanley Cups to his name as well. 2,000 Conn Smythe Trophy. So, he never won the Norris. And it's one of those oddities where he never won a Norris, but he did win the Conn Smythe. So there was never any question about him making it to the Hall of Fame. It wasn't a thing. But again, it shows that you can have a really long, successful career, but based on which era you're in, you might get blocked out by a Ray Bourque or by a Nicklas Lidstrom, right? Larry Murphy, 1,615 games played, 288 goals, 929 assists, 1,217 points. Only 1,084 penalty minutes. I say only because he's sandwiched between guys that had more. But he did have 4 Stanley Cups. So Larry Murphy never won a Norris Trophy. He was always a very good offensive-minded defenseman. And played a pretty clean game. And then when his career was kind of considered to be done, he ends up going to Detroit and proving it's not done. And he wins himself a couple championships. So Larry Murphy is an example of one of those players that as they get older, sometimes, fans will say, well, he's slowed down. It's probably time to go. And they prove that you're wrong. Ray Bourque, 1,612 games played by him. 410 goals, which is the highest of anybody on the list. 1,169 assists for 1,579 points. Nothing short of remarkable, right? 1,141 penalty minutes. 1 Stanley Cup in Colorado, not in Boston, which, again, to me is just mind-blowing. Bourque not winning a Stanley Cup in Boston should be criminal. Really should be criminal. 1987, 1988, 1990, 1991, 1994, Norris trophies for Ray Bourque. He dominated that era. And it was his scoring, and he was very good defensively. He could play a ton of minutes. He could play really long shifts. Just never seemed to tire out. And he wasn't a guy that made a lot of mistakes either, so it makes sense that he had as many Norris trophies as he did. Then you get to Nick Lidstrom, 1,564 games, who every time I see Nick Lidstrom now, he still looks like he could play. I would not be surprised if the next time Detroit makes the playoffs for Game 1, they're like, hey, so we signed Nick Lidstrom. we've decided to put him in the lineup. We actually did it before the trade deadline. Nobody noticed because they went, Nick Lidstrom for $750,000. Can't be that, Nick Lidstrom. Yep. And then he goes out, scores a hat trick. I wouldn't be surprised. So in that 1,564 games, 264 goals, 878 assists, 1,142 points. The remarkable thing to me about Lidstrom was I never thought of him as being just a really dynamic offensive defenseman. He was just kind of perfect in everything. Whatever he wanted to do on whatever given shift, he could do it. So 514 penalty minutes because he did not take penalties. He had 4 Stanley Cups and won a bunch of Norris trophies. 2001, 2002, 2003, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2011. So again, for defensemen during that era, Lidstrom would just block you from having access to the Norris Trophy. This is why when I talk about defensemen and might say this guy didn't have a Norris, and somebody might say, well, if they don't have a Norris Trophy, may not be a Hall of Famer, I would counter with, we need to have more than one trophy for a defenseman if that's going to be a Hall of Fame consideration. Because, yeah, Lidstrom blocked him out. He also won the 2002 Conn Smythe Trophy. So all of those Norrises and then the Conn Smythe. So all Stanley Cup winners to this point, which I think is impressive. That anybody above Phil Housley, apologies to Phil Housley, but anybody above him on this list has at least one Stanley Cup. Phil Housley, 1,495 games played, 338 goals, 894 assists, 1,232 points. He was not a defenseman for every single one of those games. He did play forward at times in both Buffalo and Winnipeg, but he could do both. 822 penalty minutes for him. And interestingly enough, with Phil Housley, because of the era he's in, he never won the Norris Trophy. So, and partly probably because he played forward at times as well. So that would hurt his Norris consideration. But yeah, Housley's an interesting one. Glenn Wesley is also a player who just kept going. 1,457 games played, 128 goals, 409 assists, 537 penalty minutes, 537 points, 1,045 penalty minutes, and he got himself a Stanley Cup in Carolina. So the thing I remember most with Glenn Wesley, other than him being the draft pick taken by Boston in the Cam Neely trade, so Barry Peterson wasn't the only oops in there. The Cam Neely, Glenn Wesley part, it hurt Vancouver for a long time. But Wesley had a very long career, good top 4 defenseman, not a Norris Trophy guy. I don't think he was ever a finalist for the Norris. I'd be kind of shocked if he was. He played on the same team as Bourque, so that doesn't help. But yeah, he did end up winning a Stanley Cup. I was very happy for him when he got it. Again, doesn't get it in Boston. Tim Horton, 1,445 games played. Yes, that Tim Horton, and it was before my time, before anybody asks. 115 goals, 403 assists, 518 points. Penalty minutes? Yeah, 1,611. So before he was serving up donuts, he was serving up probably elbows, slashes, hooks, probably the odd fight here and there. 4 Stanley Cups for Tim Horton. So very successful player, never won a Norris, not really a big deal. Hall of Famer, and made himself some good donut shops too. Luke Richardson. I admire the guy, and I still really have my fingers crossed that he eventually becomes a head coach in the National Hockey League. He's been an assistant. He's been a head coach at the AHL level. He is a guy I'm rooting for to get a head coaching job because I think he'll do a very good job at it. 1,417 games as a defenseman in the NHL. None of them easy games. Only 35 goals and 166 assists for 201 points because that wasn't his game. His game was the 2,055 penalty minutes next to that. Richardson was tough. He could throw hits, and he could drop his gloves if he needed to. And Richardson, unspectacular, but the fact that he held on and he kept playing and he played over 1,400 games is nothing short of miraculous when you look at other defensemen that didn't play nearly as much. And yeah, so Richardson, absolutely nothing but the utmost respect for him. Fantastic career. I've thought about doing a career video on Luke Richardson. I think I'd have to incorporate his coaching career as well and kind of bring the whole thing together. Because just his playing career, there's not a lot there. There's not a lot of meat on that bone. But I think if I incorporate his coaching career, that could work. Al MacInnis, 1 game less than Luke Richardson. 1,416 games, 340 goals. I'm going to guess most of those are slap shots. 934 assists, 1,274 points. How many goals would MacInnis have scored if he had played with the sticks the kids have now, and if he had played the kind of hockey that they do now. Like I said, a lot of those were slappers. The way that defensemen generate offense now, oh, if MacInnis played that way, man. 1,511 penalty minutes tells you that MacInnis, much like a lot of the other defensemen on this list, was no slouch if he had to answer the call physically, right? So he didn't shy away from physical play. Won Stanley Cup, 1989. 1999, he wins the Norris Trophy. I remember him winning that Norris Trophy and a lot of people reacting with, I can't believe MacInnis didn't win it before now. Same as last year when Marc-Andre Fleury won the Vezina. It was the first time he'd ever won it. For MacInnis, the story was a little different in that MacInnis was always a runner-up or number 3 or maybe number 4 because there were other guys there who just, Bourque. Bourque was holding that award a lot. And yeah, so it was nice to see him get the Norris in 99, and he had the Conn Smythe in 1989 to go with his cup ring. So Al MacInnis had a special year in 1989, and you could make the argument that maybe he should have won the Norris in 1989. But anyways, Harry Howell, 1,411 games played, 94 goals, 324 assists, 418 points, 1,298 penalty minutes. He did win the Norris Trophy in 1967. So Harry Howell, again, precedes the time of me watching hockey, but held on for a long time. He ends up with 418 points in his career, so good two-way defenseman, and eventually gets himself the Norris. Paul Coffey. And Paul Coffey is I'm trying to think of the example I'd use from today's game. Maybe Erik Karlsson. So 1,409 games played for Coffey. 396 goals, really close to 400. 1,135 assists. 1,531 points. Absolutely, likely the best offensive defenseman, pure offensive defenseman I ever saw. Because he played more like a rover on those Oilers. You'd have 4 Oilers coming over the line, and then Kevin Lowe on the blue line, hoping that he can cover defensively when there's a turnover. It was some nail-biting hockey. He also, a lot of penalty minutes, 1,802 penalty minutes. So in this column, you've only got 3 guys that have less than 1,000 penalty minutes. So there's no defenseman in this list that Jacob Slavin would qualify as being in the same category as. For Coffey, he had 4 Stanley Cups. So he had the 2 in Edmonton and 2 in Pittsburgh. Or no, 3 in Edmonton and 1 in Pittsburgh. He had the 1984, 1985 Norris, and the 1995 Norris. And when he won the Norris in 95, that honestly was more impressive, I thought, than the 84 and 85 Norris trophies. 84, 85 were in the height of the live puck era where it's scores of 6-4, 7-5, far more often than 1-0 or 2-1 in shutouts. Those were virtually gone. And again, Coffey, as a defenseman, there was that debate. So when he won back-to-back Norris trophies, there were certainly debates about whether or not he was a good defenseman or if he was just a really good scoring defenseman. And if you're going to give the award to a defenseman who plays well in his own end, maybe it wouldn't have been Coffey's. And that debate, which we still see now with players when they win that award. And although I will say that the offensive-minded young defensemen coming up now seem to be a little more well-rounded than some of the previous top offensive defensemen in other generations. But yeah, Coffey was always a topic of discussion and some debate. He was a very special talent, though. Paul Coffey was brilliant. And when you had Gretzky, Coffey, Curry, Anderson, you had all of them out on the ice at the same time. Good luck stopping that. Roman Hamrlik. Roman Hamrlik's interesting because he was kind of seen as a bust as a number 1 draft pick, and yet 1,395 games played. He never won a Norris. He was never one of the best defensemen in the league, but he played a long time, and he had a good career. 155 goals, 488 assists, 638 points, and penalty minutes, 1,408, which again, to me, is interesting. Because we do talk about defensemen now that play a tough game and play physical, and we say, well, that's they're risking injury, and that can wear them down over time. Maybe not, right? Maybe that's not a thing. Maybe they're just tougher. So Hamrlik had a good, nice, long career. It's a shame he didn't win a cup. It's a shame he didn't win any awards. But again, good long career for him. Doug Moens, another long career, free of awards. 1,391 games played, 248 goals, 462 assists, 710 points, 1,261 penalty minutes. So, offensive defenseman, played for a very long time, and is 15th on the all-time list of games played by a defenseman. Right ahead of Larry Robinson. So I decided to cut it off at Larry Robinson. 1,384 games played. I caught Robinson's career, I'll say, for the last decade of it. Because I started watching in 81, right? At least regularly. 1,384 games played, 208 goals, 750 assists. Excellent setup, man. 958 points for Larry Robinson. 793 penalty minutes. So for Robinson, compared to many of the others on this board, he has the fewest penalty minutes of anybody not named Nick Lidstrom. For him, 6 Stanley Cups. 6. Only 2 Norris trophies, 1977 and 1980. His career intersected with somebody named Bobby Orr. And then, of course, he played through the 80s where there were some pretty high-profile defensemen there, including Paul Coffey. He also had the 1978 Conn Smythe Award. So there are some Conn Smythe Awards up here. That's 4 of them among these 16 defensemen. And again, it was just a cursory look by me through stats and all this to put this together. So I apologize for anything that got missed. But what also is interesting is you have Zdeno Chara at 1,652 games played. Nobody else on this board is anywhere near active. Again, Nick Lidstrom, if he comes out of retirement and decides to play for 5 more years, I wouldn't be surprised. But Ryan Suter is next amongst active defensemen with 1,249 games played. I can't see him playing another 400 games. Duncan Keith, 1,227 games for him. Brent Burns, 1,220 games. Vlasic, 1,130. Yandel, 1,083. Andy Green, 1,026. Drew Doughty's the last one who has 1,000 games with 1,007. Then you get into the guys who are going to get to the 1,000. Mark Giordano's at 997. Jack Johnson is at 997. Kind of did a double take when I saw Jack Johnson's already played that many games in the NHL. And Mark Stahl, 993 games. So I don't know that anybody threatens that record, I'll say over the next decade. It's possible that somebody on this list ends up playing over 1,600 games. But most of the guys on this list in blue down here, most of them are either winding down or they just don't seem to have... 400 games, you're looking at another 5 years. So it's possible Burns plays another 5 years. The problem, too, though, with this is Chara's not done yet. So it's not like he's stopped at 1,652 and said, well, good night, everybody. So it's going to take more games than that to get to Zdeno Chara. That record should last for a while. The question I have for people watching this is, which defenseman eventually catches Chara, if anybody does? I know people are going to probably say Cale Makar, but, while Cale Makar is a fantastic defenseman and he's going to score a whole bunch of points that's going to be just as impressive as a lot of guys on this list, I don't know, 1,652 games is a lot. So let me know who you think ends up catching him. And let me know your thoughts regarding Zdeno Chara. So I'm wearing my Chara jersey with the nice Captain C on it and everything. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.